guys, welcome back to another video. What if I told you that reading this book would change your whole perspective of love, but also destroy you at the same time? But you should read it. This book is none other than Someone Who Would Love You in All Your Damaged Glory by Raphael Bob-Waksberg. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but it's this guy who is the creator of Bojack Horseman. And if you don't know what that show is, um, go watch it and be prepared for a trip of your life because that show destroyed me, but I still love it. It's still one of my favorite shows, and I rewatch it at least once a year. So this book is actually a collection of 18 different short stories, very whimsical, some of them, very sci-fi, some of them. Some are just really short and sweet. I wanted to do this video in a very chill kind of way. I'm just in my little sweater, no makeup, nothing. I made reflections along the way. So I'll be referencing my little notebook and the book while going through each story. So it's just gonna be my analysis of each story and what I kind of took away from it and just breaking down each story. I don't think I'll really spoil anything, but nonetheless, all the stories are pretty short reads. Before I start the video with the first story, I went to see this video of the author actually talking about his book, and the whole premise of the book is what he said: love is hard, love is challenging, and love is scary. But the question is it worth it? So that is what this whole book is about, all these short stories. And yeah, is it worth it? So the first story is called Salted Circus Cashews Swear to God. So it starts off with very big, bold letters, and it just says the date is going well. He's handsome and charming, and then the font just gets smaller and smaller and smaller throughout. So I think it's like kind of a play on like a can of cashews and how the font gets bigger to smaller, like the finer print. But also throughout the story, it's kind of like the feeling of being confident, like maybe when the date is starting, and then slowly like doubting yourself and being cynical throughout. Um, and then that's like how you feel, like you feel smaller and smaller and smaller. So I feel like that's the play on the font for this story. And it also feels like the author is convincing like herself that, oh, I'm like, this is going well, like, oh, maybe this, maybe that. And but then at the same time like doubting the person too. So there's a lot of like trust issues here. So that's the first story, very simple and short one. So the next short story is literally called Short Stories, and it's just a bullet point of different perspectives of loves and its contradictions. And I feel like the bullet points kind of just show like the person, like someone who is afraid of getting hurt and someone who is afraid of hurting someone. And sometimes we hurt ourselves in the process also while we are afraid of hurting someone because of the fear of maybe being too vulnerable or being too open, and that causes hurt to someone, but at the same time you're hurting yourself. And there's also the obsession with self or others, like selfishness versus selflessness, that is explored in this story, which is just a little bullet point thing. Yeah. So, like, off the bat, these first two stories, you're kind of really setting the tone of what you're going to get into. And then we move on to the third story, which is one of my favorites. I have a few favorites, and I'll let you know which one they are. So this one is one of my favorites. It's called A Most Blessed and Auspicious Occasion. So this is very interesting, and it's very Bojack Horseman, if you know. So it's a story about demons and aliens getting married. Like they want a really small, quaint wedding, but then there's so many like rituals they have to do, like sacrificing lambs and having like some unholy choir sing at their wedding. So I interpreted this like the two characters as they were aliens or like some sort of mythical creature, but at the same time they can also be interpreted as like humans. So while reading the book, I also tried to find other people's reviews and analysis of each story while like cross-referencing my own. But honestly, it's up to you what you want to interpret it as. So there's this part that I really like, and that's why I like this short story a lot. Is when the couple is kind of fighting because of the stress from the marriage and from like family and the pressures around them. Like, oh, you're not sacrificing like 900 lambs or goats, and then they're fighting like, oh, like why do you love me? Why do you not? And then he replies like, oh, I love you for all the normal reasons. And then the partner replies like, all the normal reasons, like what do you mean by that? And he says, yeah, the normal reasons, like I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. It's all the dumb cliches about how even when I'm mad at you, I love you, and how every day the best part of it is waking up next to you. And it kills me that this is all the normal, typical people in love stuff. But I want to believe our love is special, that it's bigger and more interesting than any love that anyone else had had before. But the heartbreaking truth is my love for you is so consistent, predictable, and boring. As the story goes on, you realize that these two characters really do love each other for the way they are, even though it might not seem like it because you're just so used to the same routines and the predictability of it all. But isn't predictable good too? I really quite like this story. It's very quirky, and yeah. So this is the fourth story. It's called Misconnection and for W, like the little the audio thing. Yeah. And it's basically two strangers on a train for 60 years, and they're facing each other for the whole time, not knowing how to make the first move. So they're just on the train for 60 years, just looking at each other, and there's this whole like will they won't they situation going on. The whole point is misconnections and how you miss your chance when you don't act on how you feel. And this is an exaggeration obviously, but imagine 60 years sitting in front of someone and not just going up to them being like, hey, what book you're reading, or hey, like I thought like you were cute or something. And then it's like the opportunity is there for you to grab it, but you're just giving yourself excuses. The whole idea of like almost, like could have, becomes like what if, and then it's like I should have. And this thought process would kill you. One day she just gets off the train, and one day like you just don't have that opportunity anymore, but it's been standing in front of you for 60 years waiting for you to grab it, but you just don't. Oh, it's heartbreaking. It's kind of like really heart wrenching. This one. The story goes like you hesitated briefly there, perhaps waiting for me to say something, giving me one last chance to stop you. But rather than spit out a lifetime of suppressed, almost conversations, I said nothing, and I watched you slip out between the closing sliding doors. Ugh, heart wrenching. And then he goes on to think about the 60 years that they spent together on the train, and he thought. And I thought about how amazing it is that you can know somebody for 60 years and yet still not really know that person at all. It's true, like you could think that you know someone, but actually you don't. And I saw an interpretation of this quote saying that this might be a marriage falling apart, like a metaphor for a marriage falling apart, which I thought was a really interesting take because I didn't think that while reading this. I just thought of like missed opportunities. And then we move on to this really interesting one. I I would say that I'm quite guilty reading this, and it resonated pretty much quite well with me. And it's called The Serial Monogamist Guide to Important New York City Landmarks. So it follows through this person's life dating throughout the city, like in New York City, right? And how like different places mean different things with different people. I wrote down in my notebook saying that dating in a place you grew up in and having places be haunted by memories with different people. Some you still think about today and some you wish to forget, which is so true. And like certain places will only made special because of the person you're with. It can be a very ordinary place, but because you give meaning to it, it becomes special. And like We give meaning to non-living things, and that's why they have value and sentiment. And just like objects, places also have the same um, value in them because we choose to give it to them. It just feels like you're stuck in a graveyard with everyone haunting you left, right, and center, everywhere you walk, everywhere you go. And sometimes it's hard to move on from that and, face your demons and your ghosts from your past. Moving on to this next story, also one of my favorites, it's called We Men of Science, which gave me a total existential crisis. While reading this, I literally wrote down heart shape existential crisis on my notebook. So it's about like this scientist guys that kind of create this door that you could go to your alternate life. Like you can be an alternate version of you. So it kind of reminds me of like Rick and Morty, like infinite universes and infinite possibilities. This one is really good, and I think a lot of people like this story too, based on the reviews that I've seen, because it's like you keep thinking that okay, maybe in a different universe, maybe in a different life, like things will be different, or maybe I would be happier there. Maybe I'll be prettier, I'll look taller, I'll be slimmer, or I have blue eyes, or whatever the hell it is. And then you think that because of that, you think that your life would be exponentially better. But that's not the point. The point is you only have this life. You keep thinking about the what ifs somewhere else. You're never going to live this life fully to reach that potential, and that will be your own downfall, like your own mind and overthinking that is somewhere better is your own downfall. So this scientist in the book, he actually creates this door and he goes through it where ideally he's happier there, like in his head and physically, because he can be there. He's like, I'm happier here, I'm doing great here, everything is amazing here. My girlfriend doesn't cook at home, but this lady cooks for me, blah 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 and all that, right? But each time he goes through this door, like something like messes up back at home, because he thinks that okay, because my life is better here, so why should I care about this life here? He's obsessed with this other reality that is not his, that is not like his own happiness and his own reality to even be meddling with in the first place. This is it. This is the one life you have, so live it and make that reality that you want in your head the reality that you're living in now. Like that possibility of you, like, I don't know, studying law, getting a doctorate, or whatever, you can make it happen because this is your life. This is literally your one shot to do it. There is no magical door, there is no special effects, there's nothing. So just freaking do it. They have this whole diagram in the book that explains um the percentage of happiness thing that I basically kind of said, where like, if you go through this door, would you be happier, would you not be? And the part I highlighted was, what if I was 0% happy and I walked through the door to find that 100% happy still isn't all that happy? Moving on to the next story, it's called Lies We Told Each Other, a Partial List. So it's just a list of word and phrases couples kind of say to each other, lies included. Actually, they're mostly lies. Yeah, so it kind of depicts a relationship from the start to the end, and how all these little words and things kind of deteriorate the relationship over time between these two people. And in a way, throughout the relationship, sometimes you don't even know you're lying anymore to this person. Like, oh, like, you look great in that dress might mean something at the start of the relationship, but as time goes on, you just kind of take it for granted and you're just like, hey, yeah, you look good. Like, you look good every day, but it doesn't mean as much anymore. Like, the value of your words don't hit the same, and it becomes a partial lie. You might not mean to hurt your partner's feelings, but in the midst of protecting their feelings, you might actually hurt them along the way with all these little lies. And then we move on to the next one called These Are Facts. So this one was pretty interesting and a little odd, and I didn't really get the ending because and I had to like Google it immediately. It's about this teenage girl with her estranged half brother on a family vacation. So they're in a really nice resort, family's there, and then she started reconnecting with her like much older um half brother. So he's kind of like, imagine like very teenage dirtbag, drinks, smokes. Like I imagine him to kind of be my type. Like long hair, ruffled hair, probably has blue eyes, kind of thing. Is in a band, listens to like Radiohead, that kind of vibe. So the ending, I kind of there's two interpretations that I saw. Go and read it before I kind of spoil it for you. But one, it's either she has outgrown her brother who is constantly problematic and doesn't want to change his ways. So he's been like the problem child, the bad boy. Or two, sees the problematic side of the brother, but still loves him anyway in all his damaged glory. So the quote was used here in this story, which is the title of the book. Because she says like our damage is what makes us whole at some point in the book. It's called These Are Facts because there's a lot of like fact, this is blah blah blah, fact, this is blah 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 written throughout this story that this author actually, like the younger sister, um likes to drop like random facts maybe. And the part that I highlighted is fact, the things that are the most important aren't shared, they are important only to us. So even that shared experience, its true significance anyways, what it really means, that belongs to you alone. And that really resonated because I feel like all your experiences are actually kind of unique to yourself. Like me recording this video now is an experience only I can have. I'm only sharing a part of it with you, and how you feel and how you're experiencing watching this video now is completely different from me when I'm editing this video. You can be at a concert with someone watching the same person perform, okay? Like for example, Oasis is getting back together. Imagine you at an Oasis concert together with like the other thousands of people there. Each person is experiencing it a totally different way. Like imagine that. Like that's so cool at the same time. Like yeah, like imagine at a Taylor Swift concert. Everyone there is experiencing it so differently, but all at the same time. Even if it's a shared experience, it's literally only like significant to you and it belongs to you only. Oh, that's so sweet, guys. Like this book really like makes me think about life, and like I'm kind of reflecting through it now while also doing this video and going through my notes again. Like, guys, life is beautiful. Okay, like live your best life, girlies. All of you out there. Moving on to the next one. This one was kind of quirky, funny. I quite like it too. Lunch with the person who dumped you. So it basically goes through different scenarios of how it would turn out if you have lunch with someone who dumped you. And it kind of shows like different stages of a breakup too, I feel. That's why I interpreted through the story. And at the end of the day, you made an impact on someone's life as they did yours. But at the end of the day, it was no great affair, no tragic heartbreak, just another thing that happened in a long series of things that happened. That's the quote from the story that I took away. It's how you should view certain things in life. I think maybe at the time it wouldn't seem like it and it might feel like the worst thing that might have happened to you, but it is just a long series of things that happen along the way. This just reminds me of this theory that I actually found out recently. So I saw some people getting this dash mark tattooed on them, and I didn't know what it means. So I googled it, and it basically means like, you know how when you die, your gravestone has your name, and then in loving memory of blah blah blah, and then the date of when you're born and the date when you died, and in between there's a dash. So that dash represents that, and it means to live the dash. And I actually really like it. I might get it tattooed. Just a dash. It means so much, and I think about it a lot recently. Like all your life achievements and accomplishments, it's all gonna go down to that dash. It doesn't matter how fancy your resume is. Like you can view it in a very pessimistic way, like half glass full, half glass empty kind of way. But you can also be like positive about it, like because your life is gonna be just a dash, might as well live the most out of it. No one's gonna remember you on your gravestone other than like what you live out your life to be, like the previous story, like each of your own experiences is what makes it unique to you and what makes you you. And at the end of the day, if your life is just a dash, why not just live it to the fullest and make more experiences and memories of your own that you can fill up your own dash with, you know? Guys, this story was so freaking cute. Okay, I don't have a dog, but I love dogs. And this story was told in a perspective of a dog. It's so heartwarming, honestly. It's called Rufus. Because he's a dog, so it's kind of written in like broken English and the words don't really spell right. So like good dog is Goodog, like in one word. And he knows that, oh, like when my owner like calls me that, like that means I did something good. Like it's so sweet and it's so cute and it shows like the dog's loyalty and love to the owner and trying its best to be like a good companion to the owner. I feel like if you have a dog, you would really love this story. And it's just very sweet and warm, and I just want my own Rufus with me. Moving on to the next one. It's called Rules for Taboo. So like the game Taboo. Like and it's written the same way the game is played. And it shows you glimpses of a relationship. Interpretation one of this story is that when game night is both a literal poor choice and a metaphor for poor life choices. My interpretation of this is like how these certain words are taboo and triggering during conversation. So, like, for example, they would say, like, if your word is tall, you cannot say short, big, height, size, or blah, blah, blah. And they go on to describe, like, other scenarios that you don't really use the word in, right? But in terms of a relationship. And I bleh, interpreted them as like triggers in conversations and like what each word holds like in terms of like memories and how you like avoid saying those words because like they don't mean the same as they used to before. So like a very mundane word like let's say like pencil can be a trigger for someone. Then we move on to, I guess this one is probably like one of my favorites, if not favorite, in this whole series, and it also gave me an existential crisis. But the reason why I really, really like it is because I really, really want to see this as like an actual like series. Like if an animated series like Bojack Horseman, I really want to see this. It's called Up and Comers. So it's basically a group of drunk superheroes that are also in a band and they're all very dysfunctional within their friendships and relationships with each other. Doesn't it sound freaking cool? It's giving Rick and Morty. It's giving Bojack Horseman, okay? Like if they made this into an actual series, I would watch it. And this is one of the longer short stories. Like some of them are like 1 or 2 pages. This one spans a couple pages, like an actual story. I really like this one. I really like it. You have kind of an unlikable um protagonist in the first place, like the reader, and you go through their story of them just trying to form a band, but they get magical superpowers, and their powers get stronger whenever they get more drunk. And it's funny because then they get blackout and they don't remember what happened, and then they become national superheroes. You know, it's quirky, but it it has good meaning behind it. So the whole theme of this story is like finding your true meaning in your life, like searching for your purpose. Like what am I put into this universe for? So it's like, so what if I become a superhero? Like, do all my problems just magically go away? Do your problems all magically go away if you're famous? Like, what is my purpose? Because the superheroes in the story, after a while, they're like, okay, shit, I have to fight off the blah 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 of like the demon verse and then what? Tomorrow I have to fight off this other guy from this universe, and then I have to use my magic powers for this, I have to use my magic powers for that. Oh my god, I saved the universe again. And then what? You know? It's very sweet, it's very nice, and it's a bit quirky and fun because there's all these superhero elements and all these weird, like, made up words that you don't know what's going on, but it masks all, like, the existential crisis shit that's going on and the true meaning behind the story. Ending kind of perfectly sums up this entire short story, and it goes, the thing about death is that it's terrifying and overwhelming and it can happen at any moment. And when we're confronted with death, we can either be cowardly or we can be brave. But either way, we're gonna die. Hmm. But then, if you thought about it actually, the same thing can be said about life. That life is terrifying and overwhelming and it can happen at any moment. And when you're confronted with life, you can either be cowardly or you can be brave. But either way, you're gonna live. So might as well be brave. I think this was one of my favorite stories, if not favorite, from this book. But moving on to the next one, which also one of my favorites because it's a self reminder for myself. And it's literally called Move Across the Country, and it cannot come at a more perfect time for me. You can run away from your problems as far and as long as you want, but they will eventually catch up to you. And your unresolved personal feelings will not change when you go to a new place. Like, a new place is not a new life, it's still the same you, you're just in a different environment, and it might be foreign, but your yourself is still consistent and it's still the same. And the problems that you deal with internally is still going to catch up to you one day, no matter where you are in the world. Moving on to this next one, which I thought was pretty interesting. It's called You Want to Know What Place I Like. So it's about a playwright who writes a play about his family and his sister, which is the narrator of the story. And she goes to watch the play, but she doesn't know that the play was about her and her family and also her dead sister. It's very, like, satire this story, and there's a lot of fun jokes about theater along the way. So I guess if you're a theater kid, you'll probably appreciate this one a little more. A lot of exaggeration, like fiction versus real life. Like, it can't be that bad, right? If it's in like a play, like, that means it must be exaggerated, right? Like, this must not have had it happen. And then we move on to the next one. It's called The Poem. So it's a poem, and honestly, it's great. Like, it's a really good poem. Like, the rhyming scheme in this was just chef kisses. Okay, I wish I could write something like that. It's basically a poem about a guy who is in love with an emotionally unavailable and unstable girl. Okay, and it's giving How I Met Your Mother, the episode about, you're the person in the well. So, the episode where they say you always have someone in your well, where, like, whenever you go back to them, they would come running back to you. Like, that's the person that you should set free. That was the whole premise of the episode. Like, saying, like, no, not maybe one day I'll come back to you. Like, giving them false hope and all. That episode? This is kind of what this poem is about. I really like how the poem ended. A poem's a thing that is hard to pin down, though the words pile up in your head. A person's a thing that is tricky to read, but it's trickier yet to feel read. So I interpreted this as, like, it's hard to tell someone's true emotions or feelings, but when you do and truly see the person for who they really are, it's even harder to face them because they are vulnerable. Like, the girl is emotionally unavailable and she has walls up trying to protect herself from something, right? So she seeks validation elsewhere from other people, like the narrator of the poem. Whenever she comes running back, he just goes to her, and she, like, has trouble with being vulnerable, being raw, and letting her guard down. Yeah, and that's rough. Like, that is harder, and that's trickier, and when they do, it's like, shit, do I really want to be in this? And, like, maybe, like, do I like them because they are emotionally unavailable, or maybe am I emotionally unavailable too? Moving on to the next story. It's called The Average of All Possible Things. So it's about an average girl living her average life, and then she goes through a breakup with her coworker and has a hard time admitting that things aren't as average as they seem to be. The whole story kind of uses the word average a lot, as you might think. Um, and it just shows how like mundane this girl is. And she's like, "Oh, I'm just going through it. Like this is boring. I wake up, I do my 9 to 5. Oh shit, I check my phone. He hasn't messaged me back. Okay, I'll go on to this. I'll eat the same Caesar salad every day. Life goes on." And then the only part where it feels more passionate and more emotional is when she's talking about the guy when they were together and how he made her feel. And it's like, oh, only then is when I feel sexy, I feel bold, I feel amazing. It's only when he places value on me. It's only when I feel like I'm seen by someone else. So it's like the idea that someone else has to come into your life to show you that you can be more average than you already are. You know, that you are sexy and bold and beautiful and endlessly fascinating is just not true. That someone has to prove that to you when you already are all that. You are endlessly fascinating. I really like that phrase that they use. That's a quote from the book. That's how she described herself, like how she feels when he's with her, when he is giving her attention and validation. Which, girl, you don't need from home, man. Yeah, you are already there on your own. You are already that you are more than average. If you think you're average, other people are just going to think you're average. Law of attraction. If you think, I'm not saying you should think that you're better than anyone else, but you should feel confident in your own skin and you should feel that, yes, I'm bold, I'm beautiful, I'm sexy, I'm hot. It's what RuPaul says, okay? If you're not going to love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else, okay? Amen to that. Moving on to the next story of this book, which is pretty damn interesting. It's called More of the You Than You Already Are. So I thought this was gonna be some deep emotional thing, but it turns out to be quite quirky and funny. So it's about this guy who plays Chester A. Arthur at a theme park based on American, like past American presidents. I think I learned more about the US presidents than I ever did in my entire life in this story because I honestly don't know anything. But yeah, so this theme park is USA president theme and they wear like big bobbleheads around the theme park. And that's their job to be the presidents, right? So this guy is faced with a couple of problems. First of all, there's this new like scientist corporation thing that wants to merge presidents. So they use the old president's DNAs in something and he created this giant freak monster of the past 10 presidents merged together. Number two, he is stuck hopelessly in love with his colleague. Like he has this crush on the wardrobe girl, and turns out, problem number three, she's in love with said monster of the scientific project. Okay, she's in love with the 10 presidents merged together guy. Okay, it's very confusing. It's not confusing, but it's very interesting. And at the same time, that's not all his problems. His sister is struggling with cancer, and his mom is quite a bitch. I feel like the author of the book, like the creator of Bojack Horseman, he does this so well. Like behind all these crazy random plots that he puts in, it shows the true meaning of like love and sacrifice in this story. Like he chooses his sister over all this other stuff at the end, and it shows like love, like family love and like sacrifice and all that. Like it's so interesting. Like you just have to read it to understand what I mean by like it's a crazy hoo-ha of shit that I just said, but the moral you take away from each story is just so interesting and so different. Then we move on to the last story of the book, which is a very, very sweet one. And I feel like it ends the whole collection of short stories perfectly. And it's called We Will Be Closed on Friday, 18 July. So at first, I didn't notice that close was spelled Close instead of Closed. So it's supposed to be like the shop is closed, right, on Friday the 18th, but he interpreted it as like we will be close, as in like intimate, as in like close, on 18 July. And it's a very sweet little like paragraph and story. And it's just so sweet. And I feel like it's a great way to end the book on that note. And it ends with, and we will realize that Friday, 18 July, like every day in history, before it was a moment, a 24-hour trick of the light, a thing that happened once and never again, and that sad truth will just about swallow us whole. Sorry for any inconvenience. Oh, what a great way to end the book! Honestly, this whole book has been such an experience. Each short story feels like you're teleported into a different universe. Like each of them has their own little quirks. Some are very normal, some are like aliens, some you have sacrificial lambs, some you have presidents running around trying to fight a monster. Like it's just all so interesting and it's so quirky, but they all have such valuable meaning in each and every one of them. And I really, really love it. Like genuinely sit down and have a good read of all these short stories because they are amazing and I love all of them, and they absolutely destroy me and give me an existential crisis and I think about life a lot. So to answer the author's question, is it worth it? Leave your answers in the comments down below. Let me know if you are going to read this book or you have read this book. I would love to hear more different interpretations of all the different stories, or what's your take on it. I find it very interesting because I feel like many people would have different opinions or like what they learn from each story, and it's just so exciting. Yeah. Um like and subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. A little cozy sit down chat with me. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one for something hopefully more fun. Yeah, okay. See you guys in the next video. Sending lots of love to wherever you are in the world.